very good morning to all of y'all, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Antoine Billard, and I work for the Unit Law Enforcement Cooperation of the Directorate Migration and Home Affairs of the European Commission, DG Home, under the leadership of Commissioner for Home Affairs, Ylva Johansson. I am in charge of the coordination and policy developments related to impact. And I first would like to warmly thank Eurojust for their efforts to organize this webinar. I'm quite pleased to make this intervention this morning, and during the next 20 minutes or so, I will say some words about impact, about the role of the Commission services, how EU strategies are connected with impact, and on the potential future. Now, without further ado, you see on screen the graphic representation of the impact cycle. I will not comment this in detail as it was presented to you. This visual is, if you will, just a memory jogger, and I will only briefly remind the 4 steps. So we have the first step, the policy development on the basis of the EU SOCTA, published by Europol, the policy setting and decision making through the identification of by the Council of a limited number of crime priorities, and also the development of a general multi-annual strategic plan. The third one is the development, implementation, and monitoring of operational action plans. And the fourth one is an independent evaluation to assess the activities, their outcome, and this is followed by an informed policy decision serving as guidance for the next impact cycle. So put in simple terms, impact is a living instrument all about fighting crime together. Now, where does the Commission services stand in this cycle? The Commission services hold a significant supporting role in impact, which remains, it's been said, and it's important to recall, driven by the EU member states. Indeed, so the Commission services were prepared together with the Presidency of the Council of the EU a policy advisory document, which is based on the EU SOCTA, but also consider other strategic papers, assessments, policies to support the drafting of the Council conclusions setting the EU crime priorities. The Commission services also support the development of the multi-annual strategic plan, the so-called MASP, which contains common horizontal strategic goals. And the Commission services chair the meeting to fine-tune it. We also participate in the operational action plans and also in the various meetings. The Commission services support the impact coordinated actions such as Operation Armstrong. I can share the link later on if you will. This operation, which took place in November 2020, targeted the trafficking of firearms to and within the EU through post and courier services. And this is an interesting operation which saw the involvement of police, customs authorities from 26 countries, international coordination efforts supported by Europol, and also by the European Commission. In that case, DG Taxation and Customs Union, DG Taxed, and also DG Migration and Home Affairs. The Commission services also provides financial support, it's been said, and it's notably through the Internal Security Fund, the ISF. Now, the Commission services are tasked to conduct an independent evaluation at the end of each impact cycle, which, it's been explained, generates recommendations on what to improve in the next one. And last but not least, the services work together with the member states, with the Council of the EU agencies to ensure consistency of impact actions with EU political priorities and other initiatives to promote general awareness and support its visibility. I will not dwell on the recent milestones, but I wanted to touch base with that because we need to know where we come from to understand where we're going. Tremendous work has been done in the past month by the member states, by the EU institution agencies, and all the relevant stakeholders to improve, to streamline impact. And this is all very positive. I'll just highlight those milestones as I said. One I'd like to talk about is the independent evaluation of impact. As I said, it was entrusted to the European Commission, contracted out to organizations, EY and RAN, and it concluded in 2020 that this instrument is relevant, is effective, increasingly efficient, and coherent. And it also concluded that it brings EU added value by providing a sound platform. You heard about the platform for cooperation that enables stakeholders to achieve better operational results against serious and organized crime than if they had tackled them alone. And this independent evaluation contained several recommendations which were endorsed by the member states through a roadmap. Parts of this evaluation and some of the recommendations specifically highlighted the importance to increase the involvement of the judicial actors. It's fair to say that judicial cooperation, and it's been said, should work as a chain process, and also from the intelligence gathering to the trial phase, in order to enhance the long-term effect of the actions implemented. And to that extent, Eurojust is a key actor, able to enhance judicial cooperation in impact, and also to help avoid dilution of operational activities and the possible evasion of justice by criminals. And the previous example of EncroChat is quite highlighting in that matter, or in that respect. From the Commission side, we're very pleased that this evaluation proved useful, and we can also underline, and I'd like to underline the follow-up of this evaluation by the Council conclusion making impact permanent, as this conclusion take many recommendations into account. As it's been said, make impact permanent while maintaining its flexibility. We also had the adoption by the Council of the priorities. You heard the details from the previous speakers. Then all stakeholders discussed their participations at different level. There was a review of the impact terms of reference to increase the governance of the instrument. And also, and maybe last but not least, we had the development of this multi-annual strategic plan with the support of the Commission services. This plan is not a public document, but as the previous speaker and also Susanna explained before, it has multiple angles, and impact has multiple angles, because all the operational actions that are being developed, they aim, for instance, at improving the criminal intelligence picture, at developing investigation and the judicial response, organizing controls, working on capacity building, training projects, etc. There's also an important angle towards prevention, and also the work with potential victims, and also the external dimension. So it covers all the angles, and it's a very comprehensive mechanism. And then this means that with this mass, or following this mass, all the stakeholders have to design and develop operational actions to achieve those strategic goals. It's a long-term view, if you will. So if I were to summarize these milestones, we have a new set of EU crime priorities. We have a comprehensive long-term planning and vision. And there's also a coordinating function that has been reinforced. And this is an ambitious roadmap for the security community, the European security community, and also beyond, as well as an instrument, and a very comprehensive instrument, I repeat myself, to fight serious and organized crime. Now, allow me to share some information, say some words about the various Commission strategies and also the action plans and how they articulate with impact. In the communication from the Commission on the EU Security Union strategy, the Commission emphasized that targeted and timely cooperation and information sharing used with common safeguards and controls, of course, are the most powerful tools to combat crime. I would also quote the Commission Vice President Schinas, who said that, and I quote, "With the EU Security Union strategy, we are connecting all the dots to build a real security ecosystem." Impact and the need for strategic coherence are mentioned in the EU security strategy. And impact helps connecting those dots. Moreover, the Commission services took good note of the call from the EU member states to integrate and articulate the impact instrument whenever pertinent with relevant EU security policies and also with capacity building programs. This is a call that is contained in the Council conclusions making impact permanent. And as a matter of fact, it is crucial to ensure a consistent and also constant reciprocal approach between EU strategies and impact. There's no good EU strategy without input from competent authorities, no matter who they are, and which deals with the threats on a daily basis. And no good strategy without committed people to implement them on the ground, in the field, and ready to provide feedback to adapt them if necessary. And it's fair to say that impact is a great, if not the best vector to operationalize EU policies against organized crime, and also to benefit from a constant feedback. In this context, impact is mentioned in several of the EU strategies and action plans recently adopted by the Commission. You have them on screen. I mean, it is on the fight against child sexual abuse. It's the strategy against drugs trafficking, against the trafficking in human beings, the firearms trafficking, and also this latter aspect, firearms, in the counterterrorism agenda. Sorry. You may be aware also that in order to address the evolving threat, the Commission presented in April 2021 the EU strategy to tackle organized crime 2021-2025. Our commissioner, Ylva Johansson, described the strategy as a 5-year program to strengthen European law enforcement in the physical and the digital world. And indeed, this strategy sets out actions along 4 priorities. So we have boosting law enforcement and judicial cooperation, effective investigations to tackle criminal networks and high priority crimes, eliminate criminal profits to fight infiltration of legal economy, and make law enforcement and the judiciary fit for the digital age. So you heard boosting law enforcement and judicial cooperation is a priority. And to that end, the strategy strongly articulates with impact. A Commission staff working document is accompanying this EU strategy to tackle organized crime. And this document provides the Commission's views on how to reinforce impact and develop it in the future with 6 work strands, which I will briefly describe. The first one and the first work strand would be to cast the impact mechanism and framework into EU legislation. And the Commission services wish to investigate the feasibility together with the stakeholders, of course, and maybe through a dedicated study to cast impact into EU legislation. A legislation would allow impact to become fully recognized EU cooperation instrument, help further align EU and national strategy against organized crime, while maintaining and reinforcing EU member states' ownership. The second work strand is about significantly reinforcing the funding of impact. You heard my colleague Susanna, the head of the impact support team, talk about the Europol grants, and on top of preserving this envelope dedicated to impact in Europol's budget, the Commission services are considering to earmark an envelope dedicated to impact activities via a specific action and a new flexible instrument created under the new internal security fund. Now, due to ongoing discussion, it is not possible to mention an amount at this stage. Nevertheless, the general aim should be or would be or could be to finance impact activities to enable stakeholders to develop even more complex operations, also to implement the strategic goals, to increase coordination and cooperation of law enforcement, all other competent authorities, be it within and between the member states, and also with other actors. And on top of all this, the Commission services strongly encourage EU member states, this is for the EU member states only, to include impact-related initiatives in their ISF national programs over the next multi-annual financial framework periods from 2021 till 2027. The third work strand would be to modernize and upgrade the current impact 4 steps. Now, you heard the previous speakers about sometimes the perceived complexity or maybe I think I've heard the jungle as well. The current description of the 4 steps of the impact methodology is rather technocratic and process oriented. So the Commission services propose to explore, again, together with all relevant impact stakeholders, the possibility to modernize and upgrade the current 4 steps, maybe with a more understandable 4-pillar sequence, which would be complemented by a series of 8 key specific guiding principles against organized crime. So the proposed sequence would be first, observe, detect, and orient; 2, design and plan together; 3, fight, prevent, and disrupt; and 4, hold, learn, and repeat. And this proposal and the guiding principles, if you are interested in knowing more, are detailed in the staff working document, which is publicly available. The fourth work stream would be to extend the use of the impact matrix. What does that mean in simple terms? All EU crime priorities, for instance, drugs trafficking, trafficking in human beings, high-risk criminal networks, should have and will have one or more operational action plans, which will contain activities which are tied together by those horizontal strategic goals. It increased the alignment, it increased the consistency, and also the coherence between all activities, and it also increased the cross-sectoral knowledge between them. And that matrix approach, if you will, was used to develop the multi-annual strategic plan for the next cycle. Number 5 is to increasingly rely on European law enforcement networks and expert groups. You may be aware that we have quite a number of networks and expert groups of professionals in the EU. They work on organized crime, and they are some of them financially supported by the Commission, and they will be required to commit in their work program to support the impact stakeholders in implementing joint activities. And those networks and expert groups, some of them have been active for a very long time. They constitute a great source of expertise, and they need to be involved if they are not already. And last but not least, number 6 would be to expand the external dimension of impact. Now, cooperation with third countries or non-EU countries and also at a global level to address common challenges is paramount to an effective and comprehensive response to organized crime. And this is why the Commission services, together with the European External Action Service, the EEAS, will promote the increased association of non-EU countries to impact activities and the development of the impact methodology outside the EU. Of course, we're all conscious of the need to adapt to national and regional realities, and the development of the external dimension of impact would also materialize through the development of SOCTA-type local threat assessments, for instance, in neighboring countries. It could also materialize in regional cooperation and activities with countries from the Western Balkans, the Eastern Partnership, the Southern Neighborhood, as well as with all relevant international cooperation programs funded by the EU. Such as could talk about, for instance, El Pacto, the Europe Latin America Technical Assistance Program against transnational organized crime, but also about Euromed Justice and Police programs. Now, I would like to share with you a quote. It's on screen now. Is coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. And this quote illustrates, I believe, what impact is about. There may be several tools to fight organized crime, and there are, but we believe that impact is the only holistic platform in the EU, from a comprehensive threat assessment with the EU SOCTA published by Europol, to prosecution via investigation, joint actions with prevention activities, training, capacity building, cooperation with non-EU partners, all that, I mean, in one comprehensive bundle, if you will. And you heard that from the previous speakers. Impact is not police only. It brings together all types of expertise, investigative units, of course, administrative entities, customs, prosecutors and judges, of course, as well. EU agencies, Europol, Frontex, CEPOL, non-governmental organizations, and many more. I could not list them all. So it's a wide range of partners. And as a matter of fact, it requires much more than police action and definitely a judicial dimension to uproot organized crime. So that's why Impact is the flagship. People and maybe yourselves are used to this nautical metaphor, which is probably overly used. Nevertheless, with this illustration on screen, I hope that you do see what it represents in our case. By definition, a flagship is the ship in a fleet which carries the commanding admiral. It's also the best or most important instrument or thing owned or produced by an organization. And in that case, EU member states are the commanding admiral, and the European Union forms the organization that hosts and supports Impact. So the European Union is the home port, if you will. And the sequence happening on this flagship is simple. Political leaders from the EU set crime priorities based on the threat assessment. Once priorities are set, all EU forces have to work together, create a mass effect, also together with the partners, and combine all existing tools to address the prioritized threats. So together, we form a fleet that can truly make a difference against organized crime. And we sail together, and as we sail together, we're stronger together, and we deliver. Susanna mentioned the fact chip. I would recommend that you take a look at those extensive results, which are publicly available. So we sail together, but we also manage to sail through storms. We have, and we're still experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic. And let me tell you that despite all the restrictions, the instrument, Impact, and all the stakeholders, they kept working and they kept on delivering. So this is also a robust system that can live through challenging times. And this is why a reinforced partnership between all the various stakeholders, building on the tangible successes, of course, is the way forward to fight crime together. I think I'm reaching, and I look at the time, I'm reaching the end of my presentation. And if you allow me as last words for this intervention, I would only recommend that you consult the various resources which are available online, be it on the dedicated public web pages of the Council, the Commission, Eurojust, Europol, and even on Twitter, where the Commission services, DG Home in that case, recently created an Impact Twitter moment, so-called, which is a kind of repository where you can find Impact-related tweets. This is a page. If you're on Twitter, you can look for it, and you find all Impact-related tweets with videos, information, etc. It's a nice feature to follow up on the activities. Now, again, I would like to thank you very much for the opportunity of this presentation this morning. I hope it helped you have a more or a better maybe understanding of the of Impact, and I thank you very much again for your attention.